Hello everyone, welcome to our war analysis. In response to calls for help, Ukraine has deployed a drone killer to wipe out Iran's drones. Ladies and gentlemen, the battle in the Middle East has just witnessed an unexpected turning point when US bases were openly attacked by barrages of Iran's Shahed drones. A surprising new player has emerged from Eastern Europe to completely change the game: Ukraine. Why would a country locked in a life-or-death struggle with Russia decide to send experts and weapons to the Gulf region? Even though the United States and Israel have launched thunderous strikes to weaken Iran, the shadow of this regime still looms large, spreading terror everywhere. Right now, hundreds of drones are being launched, targeting military bases across the Middle East. However, a nation known for surprises has now officially joined the war. Ukraine has emerged as a game-changing factor. End the nightmare of Iran by joining forces with the United States and Middle Eastern countries for this mission. After Russia, now it's Iran's turn to face this new power. Ukraine has unleashed a weapon from the future. It promises to wipe out the drone disaster caused by the Iranian regime. In response to the call from the United States and Middle Eastern countries, who are suffering from Iran's fierce retaliation after Operation Epic Way, Ukraine has decided to step up and take strong action, more than ever before. Ukraine's Interceptor drones are being sent to the Gulf, ready to destroy the sad squadrons that Iran is unleashing on its enemies. Who will end up with these weapons? President Zelensky made a strong statement when discussing the new agreement with the United States. They will be deployed at U.S. bases in the Middle East, in Jordan, and possibly even in Saudi Arabia. This is a great turning point for Ukraine, bringing enormous influence in the context of this country still bravely resisting Putin's brutal invasion of its own territory. We will analyze more deeply the reasons why in the next part. But first, let's understand the motivation behind Ukraine sending these and their real impact on Operation Epic Way. The answer to the question of why is actually very simple: because the United States requested it. In the first hours of Operation Epic Way, 6 American soldiers were killed. According to reports from Euronews, the weapon that took their lives was most likely a kamikaze drone. And this heartbreaking incident has sounded an urgent alarm for the U.S. command. In terms of modernity or sheer power, these cheap drones can't be compared to the advanced and powerful arsenal of the United States. But that's exactly the core issue. They're extremely cheap and can be launched in overwhelming numbers, in swarms. And just 1 or 2 getting through the anti-air defenses is enough to cause devastating destruction. Every time a swarm is launched, the United States is forced to use much more expensive interceptor missiles to stop them. But this method doesn't always work as expected. It was Zelensky who pointed out this harsh reality. The United States spent up to 800 Patriot missiles in just the first 3 days of Operation Epic 5. This is a very high price to pay, an economic loss, which the United States cannot and should not continue to bear if it wants to maintain a long-term confrontation with Iran. And so, an urgent request was sent out. On March 5th, on social media platform X, President Ukraine officially announced that they had received a request from the United States regarding special support to protect the Middle East region from attacks by Shahed drones. He affirmed that he had instructed the provision of necessary means and sent a team of Ukrainian experts to ensure absolute security. At the same time, he made it clear that Ukraine is always willing to support its partners. They help protect their territory from Russian invaders. Behind that message is a sharp reality. Ukraine knows that its interceptor drones are a powerful strategic asset. Not only sending weapons, Ukraine clearly understands that skill without real combat experience is like a sword without a skilled wielder. Along with the drones, Ukraine is sending its most experienced experts to the Middle East to train the United States and its partners on how to maximize the power of these new interceptor systems. On March 17, Zelensky continued to share on X that there are currently 201 Ukrainians present in the Middle East and the region, along with 34 others. They are ready to set out on their mission. These experts are already present in Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. New agreements are continuously being formed with many countries, alongside major contracts with the United States. Ukraine's combat experience is now more sought after than ever around the world. Anyone closely following the war in Ukraine understands exactly why. The drones that Iran is launching at U.S. bases are the same Shahed type they have supplied to Russia since the early days of the war. Since Putin launched the invasion, Iran began supplying these drones, and not long after, a lucrative licensing agreement was signed. This allowed Russia to produce Shahed drones on its own territory with technical support from the Tehran regime. This is extremely important for the current situation in the Middle East, because it means Ukraine has had up to 4 years of hard-earned experience dealing with Shahed drones. They understand this weapon down to the smallest detail, from swarm flying tactics to methods of neutralizing them to minimize damage as much as possible. That is the valuable knowledge the United States and its Middle Eastern allies crave. They are striving to master this new type of warfare, in which Ukraine has been both a creative pioneer and a resilient defender over the past years. Ukraine has been in the perfect position to share knowledge that helps its allies immediately counter Iranian drones. But knowledge alone is not enough. Ukraine also brings real weapons to prove its vision, and the perfect solution is cheap interceptor drones. Ukraine has successfully developed many highly effective interceptor aircraft models, but the most outstanding among them, and also the most feasible one, will change the situation in the Middle East. It's the Sting, described as a new generation FPV interceptor drone. The Sting boasts a successful kill rate of up to 80 to 90% when facing Russian Shahed drones. It has been used in real combat since 2025. The technical specifications of the Sting show that it is the perfect counter to the Shahed. With an incredible flight speed of up to 315 kilometers per hour, the Sting is fast enough to flexibly adjust its position right in the air. It can intercept and destroy Shahed drones, which are programmed to crash into fixed targets. Though it's for short range, its operational range is about 37 kilometers, with a max altitude of 7 kilometers. But its greatest advantage lies in its payload, which is only 500 grams. This helps optimize production costs to the lowest possible level. Sting doesn't need a huge amount of explosives. A small amount of explosives plus high kinetic energy from a direct collision is enough. It will detonate the explosives inside the incoming Shahed drone, wiping the threat from the sky. This low cost factor is the main reason why the United States and its Middle Eastern allies are eager to acquire these drone killers from Ukraine. To better understand why this factor is so important, let's look at the following real-life scenario. Imagine this scene. Iran continues to launch swarms of drones. Shahed drones head straight for U.S. military bases. Each drone like that only costs Iran about $20,000 to $50,000 to produce. That's a small number, especially compared to traditional military expenses. In response, the United States was forced to launch advanced Patriot missiles to intercept them. However, the tragedy is that each of those missiles cost the United States up to $4 million. Let's do a simple calculation. Suppose Iran launches a squadron of 5 drones. That's a relatively modest number. Iran's total cost is less than $250,000, but the price the United States has to pay is a staggering $20 million. Even if not a single one of Iran's drones hits its target, they still succeed in forcing America to throw away an amount of money 80 times greater than what they spent. That's a calculated war of attrition. It's a lever that Iran is using to put suffocating pressure on the United States. An endless Patriot missile stockpile would be required. If what President Zelensky says is accurate, that the United States used 800 missiles in just the first 3 days of Operation Epic 5, then Washington has burned through $3.2 billion just for interception alone. That is a financial burden that cannot be sustained for long, even for a military superpower, the richest in the world. And then, the Sting Interceptor drone appeared as a solution to all those tough problems. According to the new Voice of Ukraine, the cost to manufacture an interceptor drone in Ukraine is only $1,000. Even Reuters reported this. They even gave a slightly higher figure, about $2,000, which could be the export price. But regardless of the number, this futuristic and ingeniously designed weapon has turned America's huge cost burden into a clear strategic advantage. Now, Iran is no longer the winner in this economic game. Going back to the old scenario, the cost for the U.S. to intercept has now dropped from $20 million to only about $5,000 to $10,000, which is still hundreds of thousands of dollars less compared to the amount Iran spent to launch the initial 5 drones. This is truly a spectacular turnaround in military history, turning the strategy that Iran once believed would bring victory into a costly nightmare that they themselves now have to bear. Iran's only remaining hope is that Ukraine's Interceptor drones will not be as effective as expected. But that hope was quickly extinguished. In terms of control, Iran was almost powerless against Sting's strength. This type of drone is controlled through virtual reality goggles, allowing the operator to identify and track targets in real time with absolute precision. It doesn't stop there. Sting is also equipped with a navigation system powered by AI, which helps it lock onto the incoming Shahed drone, approach, and destroy it with a direct collision. Or it can be detonated remotely at the right moment. This is not just a technology on paper that Ukraine is promising to the US. It's a weapon that has been tested and proven its power on the harsh, real battlefield. A target destruction rate of 80% to 90% is the most convincing proof. According to United 24 as of February 24, Ukraine's Interceptor drones have contributed up to 30% of the total targets shot down by the country's air defense forces. This number will definitely increase even more as Ukraine ramps up production of this low-cost type. Iran can't even hope that Ukraine's stockpiles will run out. The National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine revealed that in 2025 alone, they produced 100,000 Interceptor drones, although it wasn't until the end of that year that they began using them in large numbers. Currently, Ukraine claims that its production capacity has increased eightfold. This means they can roll out 800,000 units per year if they have enough funding. When the United States and its allies are willing to pay, they will have a steel shield strong enough to break any Shahed attack from Iran. The entire strategy based on Iranian drones has been shattered in an instant by the appearance of Interceptor drones and their teams. Ukrainian experts are making Iran witness its strategy to drain America's wallet go up in smoke. Literally, the Shahed drones now explode in midair instead of reaching key military targets in the Gulf region. You might be wondering whether the United States really needs these drones, considering the number of drones Iran has launched. It seems to have dropped significantly since the start of Operation Epic 5, according to data from U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. Iran's drone launches have decreased by up to 95% compared to the initial phase. The coordinated attacks by the U.S. and Israel on Iran's military infrastructure have brought about that result. However, 95% does not mean it has been completely stopped. Iran is still quietly launching sporadic drone attacks. We saw this on March 19th when Saudi Arabia reported that their air defense system intercepted and destroyed 5 Iranian drones heading east and toward the capital, Riyadh. These 5 drones were among 13 missiles and drones that Azov Sud successfully intercepted, showing that Iran is still trying to use drones to sow chaos, even though the frequency has dropped significantly. And let's recall the economic equation we discussed. Even with just 5 drones, destroying them with traditional air defense systems still costs millions of dollars. Why does Azov Sud have to spend such a huge amount when they could take down the enemy with equipment that costs only a tiny fraction? Continuing to use expensive weapons is clearly not financially reasonable as long as Sad is still flying in the sky. As long as Shahed drones are still in the sky, Ukrainian drones remain valuable, and that value has created a strategic advantage for Ukraine, thanks to President Zelensky's statement on March 17th when he sent experts to the Middle East. Ukraine is ready to offer similar deals to all trusted partners, from practical cooperation on drones to building future defense alliances. I don't believe anyone would want to exclude the strength and battle-hardened capabilities of Ukraine from their security system. If anyone does, it certainly wouldn't be a wise decision. This powerful statement by President Zelensky reveals a strategic vision. Ukraine sees a golden opportunity to prove its value to the very countries that can provide the strongest support in their fight against Russia. Ukraine is making every effort to seize this opportunity. According to a report from Business Insider on March 18th, Ukraine officially informed the United States and Middle Eastern partners that they are capable of providing up to 1,000 Interceptor drones per day to help them thwart Iran's Shahed drone attacks. And if they receive more investment, Ukraine asserts that this number will skyrocket. This means Ukraine can turn Interceptor drones into a stable and sustainable source of income, creating financial resources for continued research and the production of more powerful weapons to confront Russia. Take Sting as a typical example. If we assume the production cost of each is $1,000 and the export price cited by Reuters is $2,000, Then with 1,000 units per day, daily revenue would reach $2 million. Just these supply agreements alone, not counting the potential to scale up production, could bring Ukraine $730 million a year from these cheap but extremely effective killers. But Ukraine has another, more sophisticated move. On March 15th, Reuters reported that Zelensky made it clear that Ukraine would not directly intervene in Operation Epic 5. But for them, both technology and capital are equally important. The implication here is profound. He is willing to exchange Ukraine's drones and valuable combat experience for the high-tech Western weapons they crave for the war with Russia. These could be more advanced air defense missiles to protect the country from Russian ballistic missile attacks. Basically, anything Ukraine cannot yet produce but desperately needs for the war can be traded for these Interceptor drones. This is a strategic lever. It proves that a nation that has steadfastly demonstrated the effectiveness of its drone systems over 4 years of brutal war with Russia is now in a position to lay the foundation for its own long-term success in a promising defense industry. There are two other important aspects, one related to Middle Eastern countries and one directly related to the United States. According to the New York Times on March 9th, supplying Interceptor drones to the U.S. helps Ukraine score crucial points with the Trump administration, right as Washington is pushing for peace talks between Ukraine and Russia. The message Ukraine sends to the U.S. is clear. Look, you can absolutely rely on us in the most critical moments. This carries tremendous weight when comparing Ukraine to a country that fiercely opposes the U.S. and all Western values, regardless of what Putin claims. There are reports that Russia has provided information, intelligence and drone technology to Iran throughout Operation Epic Week. Ukraine can take advantage of this to deliver another blow to Putin's schemes to manipulate the U.S. and support Russia's demands. The message is extremely simple but sharp. Ukraine helps the United States while Russia tries to hurt them. Ukraine is placing its trust that this appeal will be heard and understood thoroughly. In the Middle East, Ukraine is also doing very well, positioning itself as an essential partner for countries that previously had not had deep defense cooperation. The Azov Wiki states that Ukraine is not simply selling weapons to the Gulf countries, but is also building strategic ties to gain support from new partners that Putin has never anticipated. In fact, these relationships had already begun to form before the conflict with Iran. Saudi Arabia provided $400 million in aid to Ukraine in 2023. Meanwhile, Qatar acted as a mediator, helping to reunite more than 100 Ukrainian and Russian children with their families. Now, Ukraine can use those very sharp arguments with these countries, just as they did with the United States. Ukraine has weapons and is always ready to provide support. Meanwhile, Russia is providing intelligence and drones to Iran to attack your own territory. Between those two choices, who is the real partner? And don't forget, there are more than 200 Ukrainian drone experts present in the Gulf countries. Even while their own country is still struggling to resist Russia's invasion, Ukraine is making sacrifices to help. They will receive respect from Middle Eastern countries who feel they are being drawn into a conflict they never wanted. For Iran, the news of Ukraine joining hands with the United States and Middle Eastern allies is the worst shock. Drones have always been Iran's trump card, but now they are being wiped out by cheap interceptor weapons that have been proven in real combat and can be supplied in overwhelming numbers. What do you think about this move by Ukraine?